Quality, comfort, and grip at an affordable price. Whether it's our standard, pro, or elite socks, there's an option for everyone. Try a pair for yourself now at PurGripsSocks.com.
What if you took an amazing pair of football boots but made the performance more inconsistent, the fit more uncomfortable, the price significantly higher, but they look cool? Well, you don't have to wonder, because ladies and gentlemen, say hello to the special edition Air Max 95 inspired Nike Zoom Mercurial Vapor 16 Elite, seen here in black with very unique, super shiny gold detailing, and of course the mid-cut variation in another Air Max 95 inspired Mercurial Superfly 10 Elite. Both football boots that will run you $310. That's a $25 premium over a normal Superfly 10 colorway, and a whopping $50 premium over a normal pair of Vapor 16 Elites. Whereas you can very clearly see, there have been some modifications made to the upper of these football boots to give them that Air Max 95 aesthetic. And I think it'd be totally unfair to suggest that the performance suffers because of these changes. You'll be able to perform at a high level in these as you would any other colorway of Vapor 16 or Superfly 10. However, given the Nike Mercurial series dedication to performance and technology, especially given what the flagship feature of this latest generation of Mercurial has been from day one, it is undeniable that Nike have prioritized aesthetics over performance with these particular colorways. We're going to discuss exactly what those variables are, how they affect the overall fit, feel, and performance of these football boots compared to a normal colorway, take a look at how they fit and feel on feet, and ultimately conclude whether or not spending the extra on an Air Max 95 aesthetic Mercurial Vapor or Superfly isn't actually the best idea if you want consistency in your performance. So if you're interested in learning more, please stick around. And if you're interested in either of these boots for yourself, you can pick them up below their normal retail prices by way of some exclusive SR4U coupon codes via the links down below. And as always, if you enjoy the content, don't forget to drop a like on the video. And if you appreciate the unsponsored, unsugar-coated, brutally honest opinions on this channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button along with the little bell notification so you don't miss out on my reviews of all the latest football boots of 2020. What you're looking at here is a recent general release colorway of the Mercurial Vapor 16 Elite. It retails for $260 and features what is the flagship feature for this generation of Mercurial in the Nike Grip Knit upper, where the transition point is pretty clear to see. From that line forward, everything through the midfoot, forefoot, and toe box area, cutting off at basically the same point on the opposite side, is that grip knit material that has this soft, grippy, almost silicone texture to the surface that legitimately does provide extra grip on the ball. However, something that I did point out when these boots first came out, the giant Nike swoosh positioned on a large section of the upper is completely matte in finish with no extra grip. So there is already a bit of inconsistency in what Nike is deeming to be a very important feature for this football boot from a feel and performance standpoint. If extra grip equals extra control, which isn't necessarily true, grip on the ball at the end of the day is very much a personal preference thing, then it would only make sense to eliminate the Nike swoosh, or at least make it out of a similar grippy material to offer more consistency across the front area of the football boot that 90% of the time is what's going to be making contact with the ball. Where if we take a look at these new Air Max 95 inspired colorways, you will still see that there is some exposed grip knit kind of around the lacing system and then the upper parts of the forefoot here on either side, but this little strip down the middle along with the toe cap, and then of course flowing into all these different shades or colors of Air Max 95 wave graphics. All of this has a completely smooth matte finish texture that offers no extra grip on the ball whatsoever. In other words, no grip down low, no grip midway up, and then across the top of the foot, you kind of have a little bit of grip. No matter what though, when you're making contact with the ball, whether it's passing, dribbling, or shooting, part of the ball is going to be touching grip and the other part of the ball is going to be touching something much more slippery. Where it must be said, this is a special edition release, so if you want to avoid this variation of the Mercurial, you absolutely can, and it must be said that we have had Cosmic Speed releases that cover up the grip knit entirely, but at the very least with those, the touch is consistent. For me, I just don't love the fact, as cool looking as I think this football boot is, that they've sacrificed what is basically one of the main technological elements that they've been pushing in all of their marketing for the sake of making a football boot that just looks cool. But inconsistency when it comes to touch isn't the only variation that you have here with these Air Max 95 colorways. Of course, to have the Air Max 95 waves, you have extra layers of fused material on the surface of the upper that pretty much take up the entire midfoot and border the bottom of the entire football boot, even making for what is effectively a toe cap with this strip that runs directly up to the start of the lacing system, all of which is lined with an extra stitch, which again is very much sneaker inspired. It's there purely for the sake of cosmetics, and luckily Nike have done a really good job of lining the boot where none of that stitching is exposed on the inside of the upper, so I am very thankful for that. But inevitably, these extra layers of fuse along with the stitching add structure to this upper, making it overall feel stiffer in terms of how it wraps your foot. We're similar to more or less grip on the ball. We are talking a little bit about personal preference here, but personally, I would argue that the stiffer feel of these Air Max 95 colorways makes for a football boot that, at the very least on my feet, feels more uncomfortable. But the inconsistencies don't even end there, in that this Vapor and this Superfly, both inspired to look like Air Max 95s, are actually different from each other, where of course on the black pair you can see you just have that exposed grip knit material with no extra add-ons, but on this Superfly they actually added in some extra detailing from the sneakers here in Volt Yellow that are physical pieces of material that wrap from the underside, I'm assuming just at the very start of this fuse graphic, and then flow up into the lacing system. And if you run your finger along this, you can feel that there is actually some additional thickness to this upper part of the actual upper that in turn does once again make this feel stiffer than this, which both overall just feel stiffer than any normal colorway. And then there's the weight, where now we're really getting into the finer details that I don't really think impact performance all that much, but if you add more material for the sake of cosmetics, then surely the overall weight has increased. By how much though? We're gonna weigh them side by side with a normal colorway to find out. Using the scale in grams just because it's the most precise, we'll start off with a regular colorway of the Vapor 16 Elite, and you can see that they weigh in at 189 grams. Take that off the scale and we'll throw on the Air Max 95 variation, and you can see that they weigh in at 193 grams, so an increase of 4 grams for that extra material. We'll then throw on the Superfly 10 in a normal colorway, and you can see that they weigh in at 198 grams, followed by the Air Max 95 variation, where you can see that these guys weigh in at 202. Where at the end of the day, is an extra 4 grams genuinely going to slow you down? I am personally of the belief that it's not, but if you're one of those every gram counts people, it's definitely something to keep in mind, in that, again, these Air Max 95 colorways are technically a little bit heavier. When it comes to the fit and feel on feet, I don't want to be too harsh, because I don't think that these Air Max 95 variants feel terrible despite the extra structure. And in all honesty, unless you have the Air Max 95s on one foot and a regular Mercurial colorway on the other, it's not exactly easy to notice the difference. But with one on each foot, you will definitely feel that little bit of added structure, particularly in the forefoot and toe box area I found, more so than the midfoot. And there's an argument to be made that maybe there's a little bit of extra structure and responsiveness that comes from that extra material. But I would say more so it's just the firmness on foot that you can feel that I don't necessarily love on these compared to the normal colorway, even though the difference at the end of the day is relatively subtle. Beyond that though, there really isn't nothing in terms of lockdown or fit or responsiveness or the traction or the underfoot zoom that really differs from a normal colorway. You're just paying a huge premium for the way that these look. And of course, the fact that half of the grip knit, if not 3/4 of it, has been completely covered up. In other words, just like I've said about the Vapor 16 and Superfly 10 Elite, these variants still feel really good on feet. If you like that super snug, very secure one-to-one sensation, these are as good as any other Mercurials. And from a width and sizing perspective, they definitely have a slimmer profile to them, where if you have really wide feet, I don't necessarily think Mercurials are ever the best idea, but if you like that tight fit, I do think that the overall shaping will work for most people, probably because of the little bit of extra flexibility of the normal colorways. A normal color over the Air Max 95 variant, if you're thinking you need that little bit of extra width, might be a better idea. So something to keep in mind. And then as far as sizing is concerned, I'm wearing these in my usual size 9.5 US, and the fit and the length is perfect. So whether it's these ones or a normal colorway, I would strongly recommend going true to size in order to achieve the best possible fit. So in conclusion, I want to be clear in saying that I don't think these Air Max 95 Mercurials are bad, but if you've had your eye on a pair of Mercurials and like the idea of grip knit, then these boots might be a little bit disappointing in that the grip knit has taken a backseat to the cosmetics. Where in comparison to a normal top-end Mercurial, you have no grip down low, some grip in the forefoot, some grip up high, and generally just a more structured, stiffer wrap around the edges of the sole plate that, in my opinion, make for a football boot that feels less comfortable than a normal pair. But for those that I suppose really like the more raw, plasticky Tasian synthetic days of the Mercurial series, that extra structure might actually be your cup of tea. I don't mind a special edition colorway, and for the most part, I think both of these look pretty cool. The Vapors more so than the Superflies, but for me, in a game where touch is so important, with a model where touch has been the focus of the line for basically as long as it has existed, for Nike to go and basically half the technology that they introduced with this generation of Mercurials, in my head as a football boot gear nerd, it just makes absolutely no sense.